Hello, my name is Matthew Coblentz. This is a readout of the Community Resource Audit conducted on behalf of the Library and Information Sciences course, fall semester 2016, University of Kentucky, regarding field sales personnel. Field sales personnel are approximately 50% of my entire customer base. I work as part of a 6-member competitive intelligence team for a large, high-tech Silicon Valley firm. And the reason that we're auditing the information needs of this community is because understanding them will actually help me and my team be able to serve them better. Now, salespeople are often thought of as type A people. Generally well-dressed, concerned with their appearance. They can be considered type A people, but inherently, some folks would say that they are lazy. Now, it's not that they are lazy in terms of going after the sale, but if something or someone else can help them answer or address a question, they would prefer to have the other person do it for them. And for that reason, I call them lazy. It would be more to a salesperson's liking to have someone else look up a bit of information for them than to go and do it themselves, even though it might be faster, only because for them, if they are able to ask someone else to do the work or to look it up, they're able to work on some other aspect of the sales call or sales preparation. In effect, they're expanding their bandwidth by having someone else do that portion of the work, even though they're perfectly capable of doing it. But the fact is, they're able to focus on something else. And as I said, sometimes they're called type A people. Type A are generally workaholics. They can be aggressive and never satisfied. And that could be said to be true of salespeople, but in general, salespeople I find to be a much calmer bunch than just type A. Yes, they can be aggressive about making a sale, or they can be highly competitive in terms of either their life or something like that. But in general, I find them to be likable people who just want to be trusted because they want to be able to service the customer and give them good advice. Now, because we work in a high-tech Silicon Valley firm, they have to be very conversant with technology. In fact, we are selling data protection products that help people do a backup. Now, backup is pretty much a commodity business, and it can be boring, but they are expert at linking the value proposition of the data protection products to the business value of the customer, even though they may not be the engineer who could actually run it. In general, they all have a college degree, 6 years of selling experience in high-tech firms, or I should say, in selling through high-tech firms to what we sometimes call the C Club, the Chief Marketing Officer, the Chief Information Officer, the Chief Executive Officer, the C Club. They have a very strong sense of personal presence and a very good set of verbal communication skills, and they are insanely focused on building strong client relationships. Most successful salespeople do their homework. When they're getting ready for a sales call, they will absolutely think through all possible questions, they think through all the answers, and they want to have everything all presented so that they can look and appear responsive. Surprisingly, in reviewing the literature about salespeople, and there is an awful lot of literature about salespeople and their behavior and different techniques to use and their perception around, how well or how willing they are to adopt technology and those kinds of things, and even how to establish client trust and manage satisfaction rates and retention rates and all of that. There is surprisingly little information regarding how a salesperson actually goes about preparing for a sales call or a meeting with a customer. There is virtually no study that I could find that talks about the preparation work that a salesperson will do in order to have that sense of edge and the ability to respond to any possible question that might arise or an objection that a customer or prospect might bring up. In a salesperson's mind, the ability to sound prepared and be prepared actually allows them to engage with that customer and to bring back all of that information for the benefit of the customer, thus establishing or reinforcing that trust relationship that they're so eager to have, because it is the trust relationship that allows them to sell and to close a deal. How they approach that, all the information search behaviors, models, and the like that we saw in the case book are absolutely lacking. Could find nothing that actually talked about their information search behaviors, but an enormous amount of information about the kinds of technology they might use, some tantalizing bits in terms of the way they actually view those kinds of things, but in fact, nothing about how they actually go about and do a search. Now, referring back to my previous statement about salespeople and the kinds of people they are, when I said they're lazy, they are the epitome of the principle of least effort. If they can find someone else to do the work for them, they will cheerfully ask you to do it. So perhaps this is one of the reasons for there being a dearth of information regarding information search behaviors for salespeople. The profession of sales actually has, I think, a pretty strong sort of negative connotation amongst many people, sleazy salesmen, car salesmen, and high pressure sales tactics and the like. But I actually find that for most salespeople, that's not quite true. Their ethics and values contribute more, as you can see in the quote here from Willingham, that their ethics and value systems contribute more to the actual success of an individual sale than almost any other strategy they might follow. There are a number of different standards of conduct associated with salespeople or the people they might ask to get information for them. So, for example, when we talk about sales professionals, there's a set of standards. Not all salespeople have to ascribe to them, but it is straightforward enough to say, I will be ethical and honest in my dealings with a customer. I will be ethical and honest in how I present things for my company or how I manage my expenses and the like. If I have a competitive intelligence team and I ask them to find information, there are standards and the like for governing how that information is collected and how a competitive intelligence professional behaves. Because all of this ultimately sort of rolls up into something that can be exemplified by the example that many of us may have heard of, where Procter & Gamble had retained some contractors to obtain competitive information from Unilever regarding the hair color product from L'Oreal. And both Unilever and Procter & Gamble were considering acquisitions or an acquisition of L'Oreal. By using the third party, the Procter & Gamble team somewhat lost control of exactly how the third party competitive intelligence professionals behaved, and they were caught actually rooting around in the garbage bins of Unilever looking for competitive information that could be used. Eventually, Procter & Gamble was forced to settle for $10 million and allow Unilever to actually acquire L'Oreal. Because of this, even though at the time dumpster diving is not illegal, that the contractors were not in fact employees of Procter & Gamble and those kinds of things, but it was just such a bad situation overall that any of the information gained, and there was very little, it was actually sort of tainted overall for Procter & Gamble, and it was better just to settle out of court and those kinds of things. All of this gives rise to a basic example, what we call fruit of the poisonous tree, normally used in terms of criminal cases and the prosecution of an alleged suspect. But in this case, any information that could be tainted or poisonous simply affects the entire sales deal and will often fall out. So bad behavior could lead to tainted information, and ultimately what you really have to realize is actually ethical selling decisions based on truth and honesty always lead to a more successful sale. Dishonesty, bad ethics, and the like often fail. So in this case, you look at Dieter's quote that the ethical selling decisions are based on truth and honesty, which are essential for the long-term relationships, and they can only be maintained through mutual respect and trust. Somewhat obvious, but at the same time, absolutely necessary. In searching for the information associated with this particular audit, I actually started with an overall topic here at the top. What are the information seeking behaviors of, including techniques used by or technologies employed by field sales personnel in preparing for a client meeting? Now I broke that up into 3 subtopics: information seeking behaviors, field sales personnel, and client meeting preps. And I used a number of different sources. You can see that in the table on the left. I was a little surprised that while each of those yielded something on the order of somewhere between 5 and 10 million results, when I actually added them all together, I got nothing. There were 0 results that were actually common across all of those, and so I was forced to try something different. So I went back to the entire thing and reformulated it to be information tools and sales personnel just to see how that goes. Notice this does not include the word behavior, because the word behavior turned out to be the problem with the topics in the first category. There is no behavior, therefore there were no articles. So using the business source complete and some limiters, I actually was able to bring this down to 349 articles, which was very useful. It was much more relevant, however, to use some of those articles and to follow either specific authors or specific articles that seem completely relevant due to the title, and then go out to the publisher, in most cases Elsevier or the Journal of Marketing, and to actually follow the human curated suggestions on the website. So if article A is posted on the website and you followed it, there are human curated suggestions that pop up on the website, and you can actually follow those as links. And that led to an enormous set of, really a treasure trove of good articles to read. So Salesforce.com is the most commonly used sales tool in selling, or I should say probably in the world today. So the resource guide includes a number of tools on how to leverage that, because you can actually use that for all kinds of data mining and data behavior characteristics and those kinds of things to identify candidates and prospects to approach or to actually conduct email campaigns. There are social tools that you can use, such as Mazinga and the like, to keep tabs on what the customers are doing, because the more you understand what they're doing, the better you can engage them in a conversation. And then lastly, there are selling and sales tools and techniques and methodologies that are listed in the guide overall. And again, we'll actually have to do a research in order to conduct anything in terms of information behavior searches. So there's nothing in the guide for that. Which brings us to the needs assessment. Salespeople would prize the ability to obtain information more highly than the actual relevance of it. So relevant information, once minimally achieved, is not as important as the ability of getting it. So close is good enough, because time is money, and therefore, as long as the minimum standard of relevance is met, salespeople are much more interested in obtaining it, provisioning it, and leveraging it in the conversation, however that might be. Thanks, and if you have comments, please post them.